about just putting the bullshit. That's why I still haven't posted the fucking historical thing, because I don't know what's in there. Oh my god,
not the historical thing.
You should post it. Just post
it. A legendary historical.
What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst?
Well,
Phil,
yeah.
Can't you edit it?
No.
Editing sucks,
I wouldn't
dude.
want to anyway. It's an artwork at this point.
I reckon just fucking release it, Connor.
The thing is, it's not going to be very interesting. It's just going to be absolute bullshit for like 3.5 hours.
I reckon it probably was interesting. People love it. Mate, you must get more requests for that than anything. I bet more people request that than anything. People want to hear it.
Yeah, but although, of course, with the size of our audience, that I do get more people requesting that than anything, but that amounts to like 3 people a year will request it.
Well, I think that's, I think that's quite a sizable percentage.
All right, we're dropping in here. We're just going to go for it.
Go.
We're here with Kyle McLachlan of thefight-site.com, who has handed over the reins. He is stepping down. His long dictatorial reign is finally ended, handing over to the iron fists of Ed Gallo. But Kyle, we're very happy to have you joining us today, even on a sad occasion. I think the best thing to do for any kind of funeral or wake, any celebration, it should be a celebration is what I'm saying. Any ceremony, even a casual one like this following a great person's death, should be about their life and not just getting into, we don't even really know what happened yet to Marvin Hagler, but we know what he did in the 60-odd years before his untimely passing, and we thought, Kyle, it'd be really good to have you on as the, most renowned boxing expert on MMA Twitter, anyway, to discuss the career and life of Marvelous Marvin with us. So thank you for joining us. And
thank you.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you, man. How do you think we should broach this topic?
Well, usually what happens is you're always good at being like a middleman. You often say, "Oh, I think this. What do you know?" And then you fire it over to me, and I might expound on something further or offer a little bit of information on the topic at hand. So, if there's anything that you guys, because Phil is here as well, as the ardent listener will know, have got like thoughts about, then feel free to bring them up, and I can add some colour to it, or feel free to just ask me outright a question, and I'll answer it.
Sure. Well, the thing is, it'll feel kind of weird. It feels kind of weird to me, to be honest, because here's Marvin Hagler, the great man, not only inside the ring, but as far as I can tell, outside the ring, just loved and respected by everyone. And we're gonna talk about technique and shit like that. It almost feels like paltry and small, but this is how I know to appreciate boxers. So. I guess I'll kick us off then, Kyle, and you can give me your thoughts on this. Marvin Hagler, greatest southpaw jabber of all time?
Ooh. Either him or Pernell Whitaker, also sadly departed.
Mm-hmm. I also know Vicente Saldivar was a very good jabber as well. Another great southpaw.
As you know, one of my favourites. I would say Hagler was the best southpaw jabber. Yes. He had the best switch hitting jabber, I would say. Out of all the prolific switch hitters, Marvin Hagler was the best at jabbing from either stance.
What do you think?
That's a fair way of putting it.
What do you think made him such a good switch hitter? Because that is one of the most famous aspects, and should be of great interest, I think, to our more MMA, leaning listeners, of which most of them are. There's a lot of echoes of what Marvin Hagler did in the kind of footwork, the celebrated footwork of fighters like Dominic Cruz and T.J. Dillashaw. Hagler, I think, did it far better, but the whole changing angles, fighting square, fighting out of either stance, moving any direction. Can I just say this? We talk about styles a lot on this show because that's my particular pathology, but the all too rare all-terrain fighter, to me, that's Marvin Hagler. could literally do it all. He could pressure, he could brawl, he could counterpunch, he could outfight behind that beautiful right jab. He could really fight any kind of fight he needed to, and frequently fought multiple kinds of fight in the same bout. So tell me about that, Kyle. What made him so versatile?
It's how prolific he was from both stands. As you say, like at range, excellent jabber with either hand. At mid-range, really, no, I wouldn't say he was well known for being a slick defensive fighter, but it's the little twitches, the little slips, the little rolls that allow him to be an aggressive counter-puncher. And then on the inside, literally one of the best fighters of all time that's sticking his shoulder in and just getting to work.
Yeah.
And with that, switching in and out of stances, if he misses a shot, he's going to follow through and switch his front foot and then start working you with the other stance. So I think that's what he was particularly great at, was just how prolific he was from either stance. And he really was the consummate all-rounder.
Yeah.
I would say, like you said earlier, definitely one of the best jabs I've ever seen. But also just one of the best pressure fighters. He's a pressure fighter, yes, but also, and I hate to use this term, but it's actually true, a fantastic brawler.
Yeah.
A guy that could force you into a scrap. Oftentimes, you see with Hagler, he would start about more conservatively, and once he felt that he had the measure of his man, he just walked wade in and beat the shit out of him. And he was fantastic at that. But also, if you were going to invite a brawl, he'd start whenever.
I think that was kind of
Hearns, famously, he had to initiate a brawl because he was badly cut.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the factor that, in my mind, separates basically all of the Fab Four, the Four Kings, from the rest of the pack, because it was in all of their divisions, it was such an incredible era for boxing. It was just endlessly top-notch challenges. Even people I just watched Hagler's second to last fight, the fight with John Mugabe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mugabe.
Well. Yeah.
Even guys that were coming in without being particularly praised would deliver by far their best performances against these guys. And certainly, Kyle, you and I have talked about this with Sugar Ray Leonard, that he was a great smart boxer, and then things would get rough, and at a certain point he would just decide to bomb on people.
Absolutely.
That was the way out. He was an underrated power puncher, and Marvin Hagler had that so much in that Mugabe fight, one of the greatest examples, but far from the only one, where he has this really resistant, tough, durable, just unfailing opponent in front of him who continues to be dangerous throughout the fight. And there come these moments where he's like, I'm going to make it a test of wills. There's nothing left to do. I've touched him with all my skills. He's still here. It's time to brawl. And he did it so beautifully that, like you sort of alluded, it feels bad to call it brawling. It feels unfair because it was such intelligent technique. But in terms of the shape of how he would start fighting, it was a brawl. He would just dive in, throwing massive combinations, eat a shot on the chin and just fire back with two more, just breaking his opponent when nothing else had worked.
And this was probably particularly unpleasant for someone like Mugabe, who was a huge puncher in his own right. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things I said before we started the show is I wrote to the two of you guys and I was like, I am ready to talk about the most boring one of the Fab Four in a transparent attempt to get Kyle angry. Because that's the content that people come to Heavy Hands when Kyle is on for. They want to hear Kyle rage. But I was thinking about this from... it's hard to find someone for whom Hagler... I mean... Hagler is their famous one of the Four Kings, and I was thinking about why that is, and I think it's sort of related to the way you guys were talking about it from a technical standpoint, because I've always found him to be a really, both in terms of the way he fought and, just the sort of the tenor of his career, particularly compared to the other three, I found him like quite an impenetrable fighter.
Yeah.
Like just the way that he fights from one stance and he's really super good, and he fights from the other stance and he's super good, and he's coming forward and he's good, and he's going backwards and he's good, and he's just like visually, he looks like just this gleaming thing that everything bounces off, and no one ever, it's incredibly difficult to actually hurt him.
Yeah.
I think
impossible.
He was famously bragging that like he'd never been knocked down before he fought Hearns, and he was laughing off Hearns' power. And just in terms of the fact that he pretty much just sat while the other guys jumped around weight classes and did crazy things, he was far more likely just to sit behind his championship and just be like, here I am, this is what I do. Admittedly, he had a much rougher road up than a lot of the rest of them did because he was so much less hyped. But there was probably a reason for that in there as well.
I think the reason for the lesser hype. Sorry to interrupt, Phil. I just want to say, like, I think the lesser hype may be tied to how good Marvin Hagler was. There was a great quote from the commentators in his fight with Tony Sipson, where they say in 1973, Joe Frazier said to Marvin Hagler, "You got 3 strikes against you. You're a southpaw, you're black, and you're good." 3 very compelling reasons for up-and-coming fighters to avoid Marvin Hagler, and I think it was the fact that he was so good that not only made people not want to fight him, not want to hype him, but also once he got there, made him like so completely imperturbable. He was just an amazingly good, efficient fighter.
Yeah, I mean, he always struck me as someone who was, I mean, at least until I think that there was a changing moment in the Leonard fight, because I think that was something which really stuck with him. But he was someone who, in a way that the other ones didn't feel the need to prove himself as much. He was just very, very confident and sort of, I think self-contained. So like after the Hearns fight, I think, Hearns said to him, well, we put on a great fight. Tell you what, you move up to light heavyweight and I'll take the middleweights now. And Hagler was just like, you move up. Like, this is my place. Like,
I think he wanted to establish himself as a great in his division as well. I think that was important to him. He showed like a very charming blend of pride and humility when he I can't remember what fight it was, but he was talking about Monzon was the greatest middleweight of all time, and he didn't say I'm going to be better than Monzon. He said I want to be up there too. I'm going to prove to people I'm going to be up there too. I think that's what he was trying to prove. And to me, I don't know, Kyle, how do you feel about this? To me, it's sort of a question of, this is a very unfair comparison, but for the benefit of our MMA fan listeners, our hashtag MMA fan listeners, it's like, which is more impressive to you? Like Conor McGregor or Jose Aldo? And to me, somebody sitting on a title for a long time, especially against an endless tide of very good challengers, is really, really impressive. You give people in like the same framework, the same division, working with the same physical limitations, endless opportunities to learn from their predecessors' mistakes and come in with new and novel ways of beating you. And I think Marvin Hagler, just sitting on the middleweight throne as long as he did, for what, 14 defenses, 15, something, a lot?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I think that's incredibly impressive, and I think it's not wrong to say that it's a different kind of impressive from like a Leonard or a Hearns, who are more known for chasing big wins in other divisions, always looking for that next big challenge. But to me, the one big challenge in combat sports is defending a title for a long time, and Hagler did it brilliantly.
There's a lot to unpack based on what you guys just said. I'm going to try and address it all, but I'm going to address this one now. Yes. Marvin Hagler, essentially, by, like you said, and this is something which my friend and colleague Ryan Wagner says a lot, when you're champion for a long time, it means that the challengers have time to cater their task to you. You're the man. And in order to keep beating those challenges away is really impressive. I find it hard to weigh up divisional dominance versus pound for pound greatness. It's always a case by case basis for me. It matters what the era was like, how long you held it for, against who, and how you beat them. And Hagler ticks all those boxes anyway. For an MMA fan, his divisional dominance at the weight of 160, so it's similar, and it's kind of similar to Khabib, just with more title defenses. But that kind of aura of intimidation and just divisional greatness in terms of just the stranglehold they had on the division. And in a way, Khabib had to wait a long time to finally get his title shot. Obviously, his was injury related more often than not, or weight cut related. But he was pretty much the heir apparent from the sort of Dos Anjos fight onwards, and took ages to get a shot. Hagler was worthy of a shot for so long, and was robbed in his first title shot against Vito Antuofermo, and eventually won it against Minter, and then beat Antuofermo. So what Phil was saying about the whole not chasing weight classes and all this stuff is this sort of double edged. And Hagler was a small dude. If you see him against, he was muscled, and there wasn't an ounce of fat on him. If you see him compared to Golovkin, he really was a middleweight of his era. And even once weight cutting and that was changing, once weigh-ins were brought to a day before the fight and whatnot, he still was never going to be able to move up. He was a small middleweight for his era. He was a good sized middleweight, especially compared to someone like Carlos Monzon, who you mentioned. So for him, that kind of divisional dominance was perfect. It was just a perfect weight for him to fight at. And I think if you were to compare him to today's middleweights, it's more likely that Hagler would be a welterweight or even a light welterweight today. He was only at 5'7.5", 5'8", and that was the official height measurements for him. He might have even been shorter. So it wasn't a huge guy. Certainly didn't look massive compared to Ray Leonard, who started at welterweight. Phil, you said about how people rarely say he's their favourite, and I've got a sort of a theory on that. And my theory is, Duran is the wild man and the genius. He is both wild man. He is from people I think of Panama as just a jungle, which obviously it wasn't. He's from a city, but he comes across as this wild man. But he's the genius. Duran is everything that's romantic about boxing.
He's the inheritor of, the inheritor of the of the Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson.
Exactly.
Lineage, and so who you're looking at, who this character is,
or even
thing.
Greb, or who was the other famous? He was like a precursor to Mike Tyson. Who was a famous, really aggressive?
Sonny Liston.
No, not Liston.
Henry Armstrong.
Someone who had a style. Well, Henry Armstrong's a great example. A great example too. No,
Floyd Patterson.
No, let's just stop naming them. I'm not going to think of it. It was none of these guys.
For fuck's sake, man. Give me something to work with here, Connor. Come on.
We'll move on.
Duran is everything about boxing. Ray Leonard, like you alluded to earlier, a better guy, well, not a perfect guy, but certainly a better guy than what we know of Conor McGregor, was the pound-for-pound superstar, the weight jumper, he had the great smile and everything, and absolutely one of the best boxers of all time, best punchers of all time, like Conor was saying earlier. The guy's amazing and tough as shit. People love him because he was a megastar. Tommy Hearns was this weird angler, devastating monster, but with a vulnerable side. Physically vulnerable, soft-spoken, sweet. And these things, what made him so just so not, he did everything brilliantly. I'm not, as we said earlier, he was amazing. But to the public, that's basically what he was. They don't see the fact that, he retired to Italy and had this bizarre second career of starring in Italian B movies, you know what I mean? Which is what Hagler did. They don't see that this guy was, when you hear him speak, there's a natural charisma to him. He's not some boring dude. This guy could talk, but he was understated. And there's nothing that sexy about it. But after a few years of being champion, Hagler was the man. Hagler did, and everyone knows, of course, he changed his name legally to Marvelous Marvin Hagler. That's why you will not see quote marks around that part of his name. It's his legal name.
I actually did not know that.
They refused to acknowledge him.
I
they
did not know
refused
that.
to acknowledge him as Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And so he changed his name legally. Well, I can tell you, by the time of Ray Leonard's retina detachment, Marvin Hagler was then the money fight. It was, when's Don Curry going to move up and fight Marvin Hagler? You know, he was the big name. He was on the front cover of Sports Illustrated and the Ring magazine. And this guy that fought for everything. And he had fought for everything, from these fights in smokers and gymnasiums and all this shit, and on fighting away from home in that awful, torrid Philadelphia fight market, which was at the time, from welterweight to middleweight and even light heavyweight, the most disgustingly competitive division that boxing has seen probably since the 1940s. He fought his way away from home against these local attractions and fought his way up. And everything Hagler did was earned.
That to me, that is exactly the word I was just going to use. That's what makes Hagler so impressive to me, in a way that the others aren't. Even like, it's the fact that there were just these like immovable obstacles in front of him. He's like Archie Moore. Like, he got there, and what he demanded people acknowledge how good he was, and demanded it so long that they simply couldn't stop ignoring him anymore.
But I would say, if you were going to say, you know, we were talking about different perceptions of the different fighters, right? Mm-hmm. If you say Ray Leonard, you might say flashy. With Duran, you might say, you know, genius. With Hearns, you might say terrifying. But with Hagler, I think if you ask any boxing fan, it'd be something like respect. Mm-hmm. Respect is what he may not have been, although he was, you know, a famous in his day. This is when boxing was on NBC and ABC, you know what I mean? A massive national attraction in the 80s. Yeah. Even with, there was closed circuit and pay-per-view was coming in towards the end of the 80s. And Marvin Hagler's day, he was a national attraction. But I think as time went on, boxing fans just have this, there's an aura around Hagler, which is the guy. He was no nonsense and meant he was pure business every time he went in there.
Yeah,
fantastic fighter. Which in a way is weird, because the Ray Leonard fight, which a lot of people remember him for, was not like that. And he does that weird dance at the end, and like, that's not him.
It's a really. That's the thing. It's one of the strange things about one of the sort of, I think, the enduring things about the four kings is the sort of mysteries around them, the little moments which don't fit. You know, famously, Duran, it's so mass, But with Hagler, it's that last fight, because that was his against Leonard, because that was his sort of
the one he always wanted, really.
Yeah, legit, and it was his. And I think, you know, he always felt like, you know, Leonard had been given things. He'd stolen, you know, Ali's style and Robinson's name, and like he was, and he was just like, and he was always this just immense. Like, that's the thing. He's so self-contained and confident as a boxer that it's so weird to watch him come out. And I mean, I think, you know, the whole like thing where he comes out and he boxes orthodox, despite the fact that everyone's talking about how, you know, Leonard has been struggling with southpaws.
Leonard had tricked him. Leonard has said, "Oh no, that's bullshit." Basically, I've figured out southpaws. I've done nothing but spar with southpaws. And there's, of course, and the people think maybe they got in Hagler's head, and he thought, okay, if he's only been focusing on southpaws, I'll switch it up. Wow, of course, those first 4 rounds have possibly lost the fight for him. There is also a rumour that Leonard had a completely different approach towards the fight, and in the preceding days have been knocked out in sparring.
Yeah.
And henceforth changed his approach to one of a low output, round stealing type of thing. For perfect tactics against a champion who, as we alluded to earlier in the Mugabe fight, was showing signs of slowing down. You know, it's foot speed that you lose first, always.
Yeah, but even in that fight, which is definitely a more static performance from Hagler, which I think leads to all of the terrifying exchanges that happen throughout that fight, and that one was the same way. I think the first round, Hagler is insistent on fighting orthodox. Which he had, like, you know, been doing more and more, I think, down the stretch of his career.
And the destructive sequence at the end, he's in southpaw.
Yeah, really, there's a turning point in the Mugabe fight where he just sort of gives up on it. But I do think that was maybe a byproduct, like a flaw inherent to that imperturbable confidence of Hagler's. He could be a little hard-headed. Like, I think he would
the Petronelli brothers weren't great tacticians either. They were good motivators. They weren't necessarily great tacticians.
Yeah. And I think he would get it. I think he got it into his head then that Mugabe had sparred a lot of southpaws and he was going to throw him off. I think it was the same thing in the Leonard fight. And sometimes I think it just took Hagler a little while to adjust because he was so confident that he would figure it out doing what he was doing. He would make what he was doing work.
I'm not sure it is. I think it might have been a lack of confidence. I know that's a strange thing to say about like Marvin Hagler, but you see it a lot in fighting games, like where people will come up against someone that they know is like really good, and they'll or someone that they're under a lot of pressure to beat.
Yeah.
And then they just won't play their best character.
Yeah.
They'll just be like, because I've experienced this myself. Because
it's better to lose doing something that,
yeah, exactly.
As if this, it's like, oh,
at least I didn't. At least I wasn't. Yeah. At least I wasn't. Doing my. At least I wasn't playing my main character. At least I wasn't like really going out there like, I've gotten out.
Right.
However, I genuinely think he might have been giving himself an out. I'm not sure, but
there's some weight to that.
There are other fights where maybe Hagler took a wrong tactical approach. Oftentimes, I've heard it a lot over the years that he showed Duran too much respect. He could have knocked Duran out, and don't necessarily think that's true. And at the end of the day, he won. So how bad a tactic it is, you might not have won as clearly as you'd like to, but if you win, I always find that people that make a big deal out of tactical mishaps when the fighter wins, not really seeing the main picture.
Yeah.
You might not have won as clearly, but you won. If I may, I'd like to offer a little bit more context to the Mugabe fight because, of course, you guys have both mentioned it, and so have I, and rightly so. It's a classic. But I find most people focus on the Hearns fight, and I think it's fine to focus on the fight, but it's over discussed in my opinion. And somewhat overrated as a contest.
Well, there's only three. There's only 3 rounds to discuss. So
yeah, I mean, the first round's one of the best rounds of all time. The second round, not as much happens, and the third round's a beatdown. So it's a great fight, and it's great because if you had the number 1 and 2 pound for pound to go out and throw balls to the wall for 9 minutes, it would be amazing.
It is insane. Again,
that's why it's fondly remembered. It was on national TV or whatnot.
Yeah.
In the 80s. But the Mugabe fight. Mugabe was a light middleweight, essentially. Although, again, he looks big enough against Hagler.
He's bigger than Hagler in their fight, Same as Hearns.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Hearns is a ginormous guy, but Mugabe was a big guy. And you said earlier about gave his best performance. And that's because Mugabe had been knocking over people at a light middleweight and not even many people of repute. He was famous for his knockout record.
Yeah.
But actually, and what I'm going to say, he's from Uganda. He was one of the Kampala City Bombers, one of the most renowned amateur teams in the history of amateur boxing, and an Olympic silver medalist in the 1980 games. So he knew how to box. Of course, he just hadn't shown it because he'd been destroying people in minutes. Turns out to fight Hagler, and lo and behold, he sort of draws from that well of amateur boxing experience and does overperform because he always had it in him.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that's what's most impressive. Hagler is adjusting on the fly against an opponent he had no preparation for because he didn't know it existed.
Yeah, and there may be some.
It existed.
That fight may lend some weight to what Phil was saying about Hagler in the Leonard fight, the last of his career, because while he did come out seeming insistent on trying to make the orthodox work, he changed after 1 round. He wasn't too stubborn. He was like, "All right, I got to whoop this guy's ass. He's pretty good." And
I've got a Leonard fight waiting for me. I've got to whip this guy's ass.
And then he comes out and starts busting him up with the southpaw jab, and it becomes much more of a classic Hagler fight. But yeah, all right. Well, that may be all the time we can really devote to Marvin. Sadly enough, at least
I think we covered a lot.
I think we did as well. But maybe Kyle, you can. Oh God, dare I mention the historical perspective on the show?
Just don't.
But
you have to at this point.
You'll get 3 mentions tomorrow. You get 3 people in your mentions, the same 3 people over and over again, saying, "Where is it? Where is it?"
Bombarded by half a dozen.
To be fair, Connor,
yeah.
we did do a whole historical perspective on the Fabulous Four / Four Kings already. So maybe just re-upload that on the Patreon or something like that.
I could push it at the very least. Yeah,
I've listened to that and it is fantastic.
It was a good one.
It's good, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. But maybe, Kyle, we could maybe we could do a commentary one of these days for the Patreon for a Marvin Hagler fight.
Oh, I'd love to. Just
talk over a fight or two and just call the action. I'm going to try to do. Of course, we just had Chocolatito Estrada 2, which I haven't seen yet.
Nor have I.
Maybe we should do that one, Kyle.
Listen. Saturday night, I got up. I was in bed. I woke up I wonder what's going on in the UFC card, and then I saw someone tweet.
Yeah.
I don't believe that about Marvin Hagler. I was wide awake after that, obviously, and I wasn't really in the mood for watching boxing.
Yeah.
So it's Marvin Hagler's fault that I haven't seen Chocolatito Estrada 2 yet.
Damn you, Marvin.
Everyone's telling me it's brilliant. I'll watch it. You know me, I'll watch everything. I'll watch it when I can be fucked. I don't need to watch it. I'll watch it later.
Well,
sure it's great.
Either that or we'll catch a Marvin Hagler fight on, for a Patreon commentary sometime. I think that would be fun. And
yeah, it's easily done. We'll do that, brother. That's all good.
Wonderful. Well, I love to just hold your feet to the fire and get you to commit to something on the show. There's no backing out now, you son of a bitch.
You know me, man. I'm there, man. It's just certain people are late. They take like 45 minutes to make a single cup of tea. So that's not my fucking problem, man. I don't drink caffeine. It's not my problem.
All right. Well, that's it for this segment. Thanks, Kyle. We'll
love you both.
We love you too, Kyle.
We'll be back to discuss some UFC action without Kyle's wonderful presence. But thank you once again, Kyle, for joining us for this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And guys, don't bother checking me out or finding me online. Thanks.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Okay, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We hope very much that you enjoyed that segment with our dear friend Kyle McLachlan, famous for his acting career as well as his wonderful knowledge of a great boxing historian, to celebrate the life and career of the great, legendary Marvin Hagler. And now we are on to it feels almost, Phil, after that wonderful, enlightening, interesting discussion. It feels like returning to like the mortal plane, you know, back to earthly concerns.
I mean, it certainly feels like we're dropping down into a much, much, much sillier world.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Yes, much less of the sort of grandiosity and legendary character. It's Brunson versus Holland. Sillier is probably the right way to put it. I don't know how to feel about this. It's been a very perplexing matchup to me. Also, and not least of all emotionally, because I like both of these guys a lot. I love Kevin Holland. He is, of course, my newest love. But Phil, both you and I have been big Derek Brunson guys for a long time. The anglerfish, as you famously named him back in the day. And I cannot tell you how gratifying it was to see Derek Brunson, intelligently beat Edmund Shabazian. And finally get slightly closer, I think, to that earliest era of his UFC career when he looked like a really promising up-and-coming contender. So, I don't know. I'm torn on this one, emotionally speaking. Where are you at on that issue?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in the same place, because on the other hand, I very much would like Kevin Holland to continue his journey towards, inevitably becoming the UFC middleweight champion.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I've really enjoyed, Derek Brunson, the consummate professional.
Yes.
Because he's someone who went through a bunch of different iterations. I mean, we've mentioned this before, but it's weird to think that there was a time when the main thing people thought about Derek Brunson was that he was incredibly boring.
Yeah, right?
I mean, again, it wasn't really that justified, but, it was partially just fan annoyance that he would dared to wrestle. Was it Chris Laban?
Lorenz Larkin, too.
Oh, yeah.
He just held... I mean, to be fair, kind of boring. I still like that performance, but he did just kind of hold a scintillating striker up against the fence for long portions.
Mm-hmm. And... and then he became the insane, mean knockout guy.
Yeah.
And was consumed by that. And has since, kind of managed to synthesize the two into being like a powerful, reasonably coherent mixed martial artist who doesn't seem to completely explode under pressure. The sad thing... so the thing is, much as I would like to see Kevin Holland win, it does feel like it would have to be a classic Derek Brunson detonation in order for him to do that. The Jacare Souza fight was not Kevin Holland, holding Jacare off and winning a clinical, winning like a clinical sprawl and brawl fight, like Israel Adesanya might. No, it was getting taken down a bunch and then breakdancing Jacare to death.
Still have not come up with a good name for that move. I do not know what to call it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like if Brunson is going to lose, it's going to look very silly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't necessarily want Derek Brunson to look silly again. He's had enough looking silly in his career.
Yes, he certainly has. That's the meme knockout artist, the meme that goes both ways, right?
Yep.
It's the most profound kill or be killed type of fighter ever. So yeah, obviously what you're getting at is the question of Brunson's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And how does he use it? I think there are ways around just getting instantly taken down by him. I also do think there is something to be said for there's something to be said for working out or just forcing scrambles. Because Brunson is not the greatest mat wrestler in the world. He can hit a nice takedown, a well-timed shot. He's very strong. So if he can hold on to a single or get an underhook, he can mash his opponent in place. But he's a bit, slow. A little slow to adapt to stay on top of an opponent who moves a lot under him or in his grasp. And Kevin Holland did do more of that than I think we have previously seen against Jacare. Getting taken down instantly, bad sign. But immediately going on the offensive and creating some space and some, sort of prods for the top player to react to, to me, it's not necessarily damning to have someone like Jacare Souza continue to hold you down. But this is also me speculating a lot because it wouldn't be the first time. Jacare was far from the first to take down and control Kevin Holland, and I doubt he'll be the last to succeed with that tactic because I think Kevin just gets kind of distracted by the options he is presented on the ground when an opponent continues to put him there and loses sight of the bigger picture of forcing his way back to his feet. So, if Derek Brunson doesn't immediately take Kevin Holland down, what happens? Because the other side of the matchup is, like, Holland can tune him up with strikes, right?
Possibly.
You that doubtful of it? The guy's got a jab.
He's, again, as we always say now, it feels like, is he that good at fighting southpaws? The Chirico fight wasn't great. Wasn't a clear round-winning performance from old Kevin, unfortunately.
But I will remind you of the last time that we mentioned this. It was exactly regarding Derek Brunson. as an opponent of Israel Adesanya's, in which you, I think, correctly said, is it a stance that Derek Brunson is in? He's very square. His chin is very high. Even with his smarter application of technique these days, he's so hittable that...
I mean, that was specifically in that fight. That was referring to Derek Brunson
but
in
even
the
now,
Adesanya fight.
Even now, like, I give Derek so much credit for the improved defense he showed against Shabazian, but, you know, it's relative. The guy's head is far forward and his chin is in the air. I don't think if you have I should look up what Kevin's reach, what the reach difference is in this fight, because Brunson does have weirdly long arms. But I don't know. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Kevin Holland tuning Derek Brunson up, just because he's comfortable being a quick, non-committal range striker. You know, it didn't work so well when Adesanya was landing those strikes. I think Kevin Holland presents much the same problem. You disagree?
No, probably not. I guess. I guess it's just the physical disparity again, which was something we called out in the Jacare fight, which ended up not being true because Jacare is, I think, you know, quite shot now. But but Shabazian was definitely someone who you would thought would be able to tune up Brunson if he could strike with him for long periods, and he did, strike with him for long periods, but he did not tune him up because he was very concerned about the takedown and was at a pretty sizable strength and power disparity. And the other problem with Holland is that, like Shabazian, he ain't great at holding, despite being someone who, you know, doesn't put a lot into his strikes, despite being someone who looks very relaxed in the cage, he doesn't hold on to his cardio very well.
No. Been a persistent issue for Kevin Holland.
Yeah, so it does, I think, have a lot of, it does present a lot of similarities with the Shabazian fight. I mean, because getting up from those Jacare takedowns, admittedly, or, you know, not really getting up from the second one so much as he was just weirdly finishing Jacare. Yes. I mean, he expended a ton of energy. If Brunson can repeatedly put him on the floor, if he can do that, if he can get 3 takedowns in the first round, I think Holland will be quite knackered. And do I trust Holland to be able to go for 5 rounds, let alone 3?
Well, do you trust Brunson to go
in the 3rd round?
Do you trust Brunson to go for 5 rounds? I think of these
more than I used to.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of his losses recently have been he gets completely annihilated in the first round, or he wins. That's his general sort of win condition recently, right? When was the last time?
We've got the Shabazian fight. We had the Heinisch fight. Yeah, that's fair to say. Heinisch fight, a pretty good, stolid 3-round performance. Theodoro.
I mean, if you say anything about Heinisch and Elias Theodorou, say that they're very tough and they have incredible cardio.
Yeah, but that Theodoro fight, that was no one was really being taxed by anything that happened in that fight other than mentally. So I don't know. I don't know.
Brunson was still soundly out wrestling Theodorou in a way that people don't generally. He was getting big, high impact slams on him late in the fight, but
not controlling him. Letting him up every single time, pretty quickly after.
I feel like Elias Theodorou is bigger and more physical than Kevin Holland.
I agree, but I do think it is a pattern. Can you think of a Derek Brunson fight where there's the Lorenz Larkin fight where he holds a guy against the cage? Can you think of a fight where he's taken someone down and locked them in position on the ground? There's Larkin.
There's apart from Shabazian, who was exhausted, not really.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know. The question is,
I haven't really watched the Heinisch fight recently.
Yeah.
But he did do a lot of wrestling in that fight.
He did. Yeah. I know.
Yeah, and I know I'm partly looking for reasons to keep Kevin in this, because like I do think the opportunities to hit Brunson are so profound that a quick, rangy fighter like Holland could absolutely, like Holland. You don't have to be powerful to knock Derek Brunson out. You have to be accurate and surprise him and make him uncomfortable, make him tense up, and then hit him flinching. And Holland can definitely do that. Also, on the earlier note about Holland versus Southpaws, the one notable example is his win over Jeff Neal.
Yeah, good point.
Albeit
very good point. Yeah,
a less developed Jeff Neal, and probably not the type of fight that you would maybe want. Although, who knows? I mean, he kind of just brawled with Jeff Neal. That might actually yield some results as long as Brunson doesn't then just out-wrestle him, which Neal tried and failed to do, but Neal is not Derek Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, Kevin Holland should do his absolute best to make Derek Brunson panic in the first round. That is by far his best chance to win this fight, I think.
Yeah. And if Derek is going to gas, probably the best way to get him to gas. Make him freak out as much as possible. You know, it may in fact be both the best long-term and short-term strategic idea for Holland to just take it to Derek Brunson early on.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I think Derek Brunson generally has pretty decent cardio.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, he got finished by Yoel Romero in a fight he was winning. But other than that, he's been pretty consistent. And you know, there's the Silva fight, but he was A, sort of robbed, and B, pretty easily winning by the end of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a rough one for Holland. But then again, you know, he said that about the Silva fight.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish I could make a stronger case here on the fly. This will probably be one of those things where I will come up with a stronger case by the time I do the Vivi with Zane. That son of a bitch. Mm-hmm. But at present, you sound like you're talking a lot of sense. I don't know. I'm gonna pick Holland because fuck it. I think there actually is a very strong chance of him coming out like a fucking maniac.
Oh yeah.
In round one. I think he's probably tougher than Edmund Shabazian. Granted, that was the first time we saw Shabazian's toughness tested, but Kevin Holland has, to my knowledge, never been knocked out or finished.
Yes, he has freak durability.
He was submitted by Rafael Lovato Jr. in 2015. Otherwise, never been finished. Incredibly durable, great defensive fighter. So the survivability is there. And I don't know. I can't really picture. I'm going to have to see Derek Brunson like leaning on his wrestling in rounds 4 and 5 to an extent that he prevents Holland from getting too many chances.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, one of the ingredients to being able to actually like panic Derek Brunson might not necessarily just be outstriking him. It might be being able to hurt him from the clinch. Mm-hmm. Because as we've mentioned, he is often a blind man who needs to feel his opponent before he can really hurt them.
Yeah.
I don't know if he likes people who've been able to specifically like strike with him in the clinch and hurt him off clinch breaks.
Because it's supposed to be his comfort zone.
Yeah. So, and Kevin Holland is genuinely good at that. That is something which I think Shabazian probably isn't.
The other thing
doesn't have as a skill set, and nor do really Elias Theodoru or Ian Heinisch.
Right. Yeah. The other thing I'm curious about regarding Holland's stamina, I want to see if he has a second wind in him. I think he might. He's very relaxed. Arguably too relaxed sometimes. And generally those are guys that can through just technique and survivability find a second win late in the fight. But I don't know. I mean, I'm arguing against the odds that Derek Brunson is just going to take advantage of the obvious opening to just pick Kevin Holland up and dump him over and over. I'm still going to pick Kevin. I don't care. Volume, I think weirdly greater finishing potential. Because he's more durable, while Derek Brunson is much more powerful. Mm-hmm. He's also far more fragile. And Holland, we have seen several times throughout his career, is more than accurate enough to knock out durable opponents.
Yep.
So I'm going to ride with Kevin here.
But it's one where I would be very gratified to see Derek Brunson win, even if he does it in one of his more boring performances. It would still, it would be the smart way to go. What are you thinking? You picking Derek?
Yep, picking Derek. Yeah, like I said, I'd be happy to see either guy move forward. Really, I've enjoyed Derek Brunson's transformation into a professional, and Kevin Holland memes can't hate on them.
Yep. Well, let's really quickly then just try to address the sort of surface layer of the one other fight we're going to cover from this card. That's Gregor Gillespie versus what the hell fight is it?
Brad Riddell.
There we go. Jesus Christ. Really, really grappling with Wikipedia over here. Versus Brad Riddell, of course. Another one of the fight sites, the Vaping Scooter Gang's beloved favorites. A city kickboxing prospect, super athletic, super powerful, very technical, and a seasoned kickboxer. Is taking on Gregor Gillespie in what I kind of have to assume is a rough fight for Gregor. That's my surface level read. What do you What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I found this one actually genuinely pretty tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, on the surface, I do favor Riddell just because, we've seen him survive against not a tremendously technical, but an incredibly powerful wrestler in Magomed Mustafayev.
Yes.
But I think the question of control is really an interesting one that you sort of alluded to in the Brunson fight, because Mustafayev was basically just hauling Riddell all over the place and gassing himself out and getting knocked down. And it was a pretty close fight. That I think if it didn't make me think, oh my God, Brad Riddell has bulletproof takedown defense. He's the next coming of Robert Whittaker.
Razor thin margins throughout.
Yeah. And then he had that fight with Alex De Silva, which again, it was a good performance, but it was surprisingly ragged. I think it did make. I mean, I was looking forward to seeing the fight beforehand because Silva is clearly a talent, but it was the fact that Silva was able to pick up basic level changes on Riddell quite effectively.
I recall,
and it was
very
and
much.
It was really
sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
And it was really just Riddell outlasting him.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of allowed him to get back into the fight. Mm-hmm. That really that he just started powering his way out of the takedowns and working in combinations, and I'm less sure that that's going to work against Gillespie.
That's a fair point.
Silva landed one really clean double leg at the beginning, and then started to struggle later on and started to gas a bit. But it was notable, Riddell really was biting on the level changes a lot.
Yeah. Even
in the late going. So I mean, I think this is a really curious one because if Gillespie is a really good control wrestler,
you're right.
If he just gets one takedown and Riddell's just oh yeah, I'm just gonna get to the fence, turn around, give my back, stand up, and shake him off me. We've seen in the recent the modern game, might not work that well.
Yeah, Gillespie is in fact particularly good. This is just kind of what you need to be a functional control wrestler in MMA. But he's particularly good at allowing the usual escapes and then stifling them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might over and over in the fight with Vince Pichel, he was able to get you a front headlock because this is how Pichel's going to get up. He's got to go to a referee's position or turtle. And Gillespie was able to take that repeatedly and do damage there, and then just rinse and repeat right back into the takedown and resume control. So that is a very good point. Some much-needed perspective. And I recall, what I was going to say before is I recall in the De Silva fight really underselling how good De Silva was as a wrestler. And it being a prominent factor in how that fight played out, and it was not a walk-away win for Brad Riddell at all. So,
yeah. I mean, I don't want to undersell him at all because I was genuine. I was like, oh, this is a really good fight going in. But afterwards, I was like, wow, that guy's really talented.
Yeah, he was
very impressive.
Better in more ways than I gave him credit for, and even then, I don't know. I mean, do you pin his failure to maintain control on his style or on Riddell's ability to escape, and does that change against someone like Gillespie, who, like I said, will sort of like set traps for the routine escapes and continue his this sort of progression of like stacking wrestling success on top of success off of those attempted escapes?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I just kind of have to see it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I think Riddell has been his wrestling success looks to me like it might be, the benefit of having an athletic edge and being able to explode out of positions is that Gillespie's just, not a defensively sound striker at all.
Not at all.
But that Kevin Lee has freakish mutant arms and was just able to like punch him up from miles away. And that, Gillespie was clearly thinking like, oh, I'm going to outstrike this guy. And to be fair, had these decent success doing
pretty damn even up to the knockout, yeah.
Yeah. But, Kevin Lee is just a physically overwhelming, but he is and fought as a long striker in that fight, which Riddell kind of isn't. He's just like
really
he's a combination hooks guy.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is going to put him in the firing zone, like a bit more. So I don't know. I mean, I still inherently sort of favor. Actually, I think I might pick Gillespie.
You're kind of swaying me, honestly. Like I'm watching the Silva fight again, and it's not a great look. To just get like easily snatched off your feet seconds into the fight because you threw a punch and weren't able to stop the takedown that countered it. And I think you're right too about Riddell maybe struggling with a more control-oriented grappler, because like he didn't exactly impress in working out of like the rear waist cinch that he got trapped in after he did get back to his feet. And Da Silva is not the chain wrestler that Gillespie is. He's a much better shot wrestler than I gave him credit for. Very clever at setting them up, but Gillespie just doesn't like waste time in like letting you reassert your balance or giving you time to figure out how to fight hands or whatever. He will just keep dragging you down over and over. He is a pace wrestler in a way that no one Riddell has fought before has been. So I kind of want to go Gillespie too. My read coming in was like, oh, it's a battle of defenses. Riddell's wrestling defense is better than Gregor Gillespie's striking defense by a good stretch, and that may still be true. I
think that's probably true.
Yeah, that's the case. But if Gillespie fights the right kind of fight, and the great thing for wrestlers in MMA is that wrestling success almost always impacts the opponent's ability to shift the balance back towards striking success. They have to worry about their strikes exposing them. Another luxury, by the way, that Kevin Lee probably had that Riddell won't. Mm-hmm. I don't think Lee really worries about people taking him down. He figures he'll come up with an answer if it does happen, and a lot of people just don't want to go there with him. I didn't expect this, Phil. I really came in confident, but I'm going to pick Gillespie. I don't know, but it's a guess.
Yeah. I mean, Riddell is still like a powerful, accurate counterpuncher.
Oh, yeah.
Big chance he just decks Gillespie. But yeah, I mean, I think going to do the rare thing and we're going to go for a unanimous heavy hands picking the wrestler.
I know, right?
It's a new era.
So bet on Brad Riddell is what we're telling you folks. Bet all your money. Yes, your children's college fund, if that's even a thing that still exists. All of it. Bet on Brad Riddell. We don't know, man. Round one here. It's Brad Riddell just getting stuck in a fucking front headlock. Even after Alex De Silva tries to go drop for the guillotine, he still manages to hold on to it and control the position. I don't know, man. I think you're onto a good one here. And of course, if he doesn't win, Gregor Gillespie, I am blaming you.
Sweet.
Just want that to be clear. All right. Well, that'll be it for this segment. When we come back, we'll try to delve into what we can from last weekend's card. Bilal Muhammad, very disappointing way for his long-awaited big shot to end, and basically the rest of the card was like, well, there was weirdness and there was also some fucking incredible fighting too. It was a pretty damn entertaining, if very strange, night of fights. So we will dip into that as much as we can after this break.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, let's talk about the incredible performance of Eric Anders.
Okay. Well, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are here to talk, as Phil instructs me, about the incredible performance of Eric Anders. So, Phil, take it away.
Well, I did say to you should be worried about this one because Eric Anders is very strong, and that's Darren Stewart's superpower.
Yeah. And
Eric Anders might take it away from him. But I didn't really expect Eric Anders to sort of beat the shit out of him. And then... did you know that, like, Eric Anders, like, made a joke about Peter Yan, right? After Yan's performance.
What? What did he say?
He was like, Yan is out here playing by pride rules.
Okay. Well, he wasn't. It's not too judgmental. I mean,
no, but it was admittedly like, oh, he knows what's going on. He knows that there's a whole like.
He does know the rule.
This man is sentient and understands that you can't do that,
which was in question before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe we're actually leading off talking about Eric Anders. It's not the way this should go, but continue. This is fine.
I mean, just like it's a solid runner-up for worst brain thinking.
Oh yeah,
I think it's definitely in contention.
It's just the fact that it came literally the week after.
Yeah,
like what's going on? There's been a lot, like a main event ending in a no decision.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is what they call a no contest when there haven't been enough rounds to score the fight either way.
Yeah.
So essentially a no contest due to a really brutal eye poke. That coming a week after the main event ending by DQ, a championship fight ending by DQ, and then the same exact thing that got that DQ, Eric Anders does in this fight. There's something going on. Like, have we been living on borrowed time with this whole notion of like fighters are getting better and smarter in the pandemic era, and now everyone's just like starting to come apart at the edges? What's going on?
Maybe it's just that all their brain power they've been using to get better at MMA is just leaking out it's just draining from every other area of their lives. I mean, that was undeniably the most technically complete performance of Eric Anders' career. And it was just like, it's just clearly the old brain tank was flashing empty.
I think he's probably always been like that. He was this close. I'm going to use this phrase as a tribute to Kyle. He was a cunt hair away from being DQ'd against Tim Williams. He really was.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like,
wow, I forgot about your encyclopedic knowledge of Eric Anders' fights because you love him so much.
That's right. I'm his biggest fan. And yeah, against Tim Williams, like that was a head kick that if Tim Williams had decided not to take his hand off the ground, Eric Anders loses.
Yep. But on actual like relevant notes, we probably should talk about the main event.
Yes.
And seeing as we've already enraged all the young people by picking against Brad Riddell.
Yep.
I've probably got to say that Leon Edwards was completely owning up on Bilal Muhammad.
No, he was exposed.
And there was nothing else that could have happened in the rest of this fight apart from Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad, getting tuned up. This was, in fact, a mercy, and Leon Edwards should be fighting for the title.
Yep. Obviously, this is what should... I mean, I don't want to come down on Dana White's side promotionally. Like, right when Dana said, if he wins impressively, he'll get the title shot. We know what that is. There's fucking weasel words. But, like, to be honest, the way the fight did end, being the least likely sort of outcome, if Leon had won boringly but cleanly, give him a title shot. But I want to see them run this back. And I do not like this weirdly encroaching narrative that it had basically been decided. Like, we already know how little you can count on actual decisive first rounds. We know how little weight you can really put into a first-round knockout and how the fight can continue to develop past that in a rematch. Many times that happens. He didn't even knock Bilal out. He just hurt him. And that's happened in the first round of, like, almost every Bilal Muhammad fight.
Especially against the Southpaws.
Yes.
Takanori Sato sitting alone in the corner.
Yeah.
Being like, I'm the one who actually got rocked by Bilal, remember the name Muhammad, and looking very sad.
It really just didn't get to join the club. But the second round against Jeff Neal was Muhammad's best. So I think it's all up in the air still. I'm not surprised that given what Leon did, which was decide to come out very aggressively, which was kind of nice to see, right? A complete change of pace. He really wanted to put it on Bilal. I think set the tone for the fight early. Can he maintain that?
I mean, it just looked exactly like the Neal fight to me. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'd probably still pick Leon Edwards going into the rematch, but sure. I mean, it looked no better nor worse. It was like,
right.
It's Muhammad is being uncharacteristically tentative. He can't get his jab going. The other guy seems to be being uncharacteristically aggressive. He still can't deal with the southpaw double threat. He's got kicked in the head. It just felt like the same round again.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that there's, I think a narrative from this card is that there were things that there just weren't much to take away from. Because I was thinking of the, because I think I said on Twitter, we didn't break down these fights, but I was thinking of picking Ige over Tucker, even though he could by KO, even though Ige doesn't knock people out that often. Because Tucker's defense, this is sort of what got him into trouble before, is that he just has very good foot speed, but he's still a short guy.
Yeah.
And his head is pretty much in the same place. So I was thinking, and Ige is genuinely, especially in the first round, he is a big, burst puncher.
Yes.
Edson Barboza was really, has always been troubled by this style and was troubled by Ige. And you could see, he is just a big hitter, or at least a very fast coverer of distance. Keita was able to beat that out by just clobbering Ige with harder punches. But I was thinking, I would like to pick Ige I would probably pick Ige by knockout for this, even though it's a weird pick. But then what actually happened? I mean, admittedly, it was, Tucker leaping into range and it was an Ige knockout. It wasn't really exactly what I said. And I can't really read that much from this win at all, because it was just one exchange. It's this thing where you can, if you have a vision of how the fight goes, you can paste the parts that worked with your narrative onto it and then sort of forget the rest. So I could do that with Ige Tucker. I'd be like, oh, yes, I picked Ige to knock him out. But I didn't really pick him to knock him out like that. I wasn't really picking him to land a short right counter, a short counter as Tucker jumped in and get knocked out.
Yeah.
I never would have picked it like that. In the end, when I look at that fight, I'm just like, well, I can't really actually take a lot from that. I can't really take a lot from Edwards Muhammad either.
Yeah.
I always would have thought that Muhammad would have struggled in the first round against a southpaw.
Sure.
I mean, I generally would have thought that would be he wouldn't be able to climb out of the hole, but I have no information to determine it either way.
Sure. But there are things different about this matchup than the Neal fight.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 5-rounder.
Yep.
Who knows what might have happened in rounds 4 and 5 against Neal? I don't know. I suspect based on what we saw against Thompson, he could have probably just stuck to what he was doing. Leon Edwards has often sort of coasted down the stretch and let people back into the fight. So that's an avenue we didn't get to see explored. There's also the fact that Bilal was basically completely, perfectly competitive in the wrestling in the first round. Who knows how that factors in? I mean, we were wondering beforehand if Leon could out-wrestle Bilal. It didn't look like he could.
No, I mean, many people commented, he's not... They were genuinely concerned about how turnable Leon was in the clinch because they're looking forward to a potential Usman fight. Yeah,
and Bilal was also... he seemed to have maybe prepared for this, was also pretty good at hitting on the clinch breaks. He was often getting there first, which is something that Leon has been really good at. I want to see Leon... it's not just that I want to see Bilal get a chance to work his way into the fight. I want to see Leon Edwards tested. I want to see how he answers these potential challenges, or if he has to answer them, or if he can find another way of winning. And there is also the fact, it has to be said, the eye poke at the end of the fight was not the only eye poke from Leon Edwards. He did a lot of it, actually. There was one that was called where he just defensively stuck his finger in Bilal's eye. And then on like 3 other occasions in that short first round, his response to the growing pressure from Muhammad was to just stick his fingers out right towards his face. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It's not the kind of performance I want to see a title shot off of. I'm sorry. I don't want to come down on Dana White's side, like I said, but I think Leon Edwards waited.
No, I mean, at some point you have to be like... At some point, you have to have, there is such a thing as, like, aging out of contention. It's not entirely his fault that he hasn't been able to get fights.
Not at all.
And win them. But, his last win is RDA, and several people have beaten RDA, and Michael Chiesa did it more convincingly than he did.
Yes.
So yeah.
I want him to run it back. I think it appears that Bilal is okay. No permanent damage from what I've been hearing from him. That's good. Do it again. I want to see those. I want to see those next few rounds. We only got to see 1 round. Damn it! It's just not enough to know anything.
I mean, Edwards is fortunate that like a lot of his wins have actually aged pretty well.
Oh yeah.
Like Albert Tumanov.
Mm-hmm.
He's I think he's welterweight champion in ACB now.
Yep.
Obviously, Vicente Luque.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, he's got. I mean, some of them less so, obviously, but yeah, at some point you have to be like, and this is just a general welterweight issue, but the fact that they've now booked Usman Masvidal 2 makes a disgusting mockery of any kind of idea of.
I mean, if you're going to do that, give it to fucking Leon. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If you're going to do that, Edwards on the back of this is better than that. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that being the case, let's run this one back. I'm certainly not more confident that Muhammad will win afterwards, but I do have new questions raised by the way that Leon shut him out of that first round that I want to see. This is also something that crossed my mind that I don't think we really discussed beforehand, but the fact that it was a short notice turnaround not only was a factor because of the leg damage and the facial damage that Bilal took in the fight against Diego Lima, but we have long known Bilal Muhammad as a master game planner, a flexible fighter who can attune himself to his opponent's habits, who will adjust his fighting style based on what he has seen on tape. And only 3 weeks or whatever to do that may also have led to a different look. So, I don't know. I want to see him get a full camp. I want to see. I just want to see Leon Edwards tested. I enjoy seeing Leon Edwards come up with answers to these problems. It may feel unfair that he once again has to fight, but he has also now been sitting out for like 2 years. There's just like, the cards are stacked against him, but that doesn't doesn't, whether or not it's fair doesn't change the circumstance. He needs to launch himself back into contention.
Yeah, I mean, basically because there's other people that are carrying on fighting and winning fights.
Yeah.
And, eventually it becomes unfair to them.
Yeah, right. So that's the main event.
Anything else from this card?
What's that?
Anything else from this card you want to hit?
Yes, actually, I want to talk a little bit. There were quite a few good things here. Angela Hill, I thought, had a fantastic performance versus Ashley Yoder. Definitely a fight she was supposed to win, but she won it very much in the way I think she should have. I thought it was kind of a perfect opportunity to see like the specific ways in which Angela has gotten better, and she has very much improved in the last few years. All of the extraneous bouncing and useless movement, it's gone. It's not even there at all anymore. She knows how to set her feet. She's much, much better at getting into range before throwing. That's a big improvement. Like she did a great job of feinting her way in and then landing strikes. She also, way better than ever before, as a counter puncher. The right straight underneath the jab. Long been one of my favorite boxing counters. It's just one of those moves that seems to work every time. It's like a free body shot. And she did it brilliantly to keep Yoder on her heels and to punish her when she tried to make her own reach a factor in the fight. Thought that was very impressive. What else we got here? What else? Matthews Nicolau versus Manel Kape. Very good fight. You don't think so? You got some...
It was interesting. It was... I mean, it's one of those ones where I think the scoring is... I think this was competitive, but I don't think there's a great case for Nicolau winning.
Really?
No, not really.
What makes you say that?
Yeah, I mean, the rounds, the first two rounds are very clear. And then the third round is just... it's just Jan Sterling 1, isn't it? It's just like Nicolau is landing most of the meaningful strikes, and then he gets hurt towards the end.
I mean, yeah, it was a good volume of meaningful strikes. It was a lot of brilliant fucking left hooks.
I think that's the same is true of Sterling Jan. Is that he was landing he's landing quality strikes. I can see the argument for why he could win that round, but I don't really think he did. If one guy gets put on wobbly legs in a round, they're mostly going to lose it unless it was really unless we're talking Cruz, Faber levels of one guy's getting torched and then gets flash knocked down kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a relatively clear. Is it Kape?
Kape, yeah. That's how John Anik says it.
At least that's not a police officer for me. It is for you, but
Manel Copper.
Yeah. It was interesting because I was at the end of the second round after Kape had really started going after it and really started putting his hand, or at least he'd been going for it throughout the middle of the second round.
Yeah.
I just found myself thinking he's going to run out of ideas again in the third, isn't he?
Yeah.
And then he did.
He did.
Because I think he really has to be panicked into pressing.
Yeah.
He's got
too
really
many
has
ideas.
To be kind of anxious in order to really go for it.
I think his problem is he's got too many ideas. He doesn't have creativity. Flourishes with limitations. Manel Kape needs to decide a system. He needs to you know what I mean? He needs to set some layers in his mind that this leads to this, and this is how you respond in these certain ways when it doesn't work out. As it is, there's no. It's when he's pressuring, when he's maintaining pressure, it weirdly has the feeling of, I don't know. It's he forgets the previous move. Once he moves on to the next thing, it's the thing that the sequences aren't connected. There isn't I set him up with this shot. The 1-2 worked. Now I'm going to throw away the right hand that just landed on him to land a left hook. Oh, he ducked that. Now I'm going to suggest that to land this, and then follow up with another shot to keep the initiative. there's not that sort of process-driven thinking. I don't see it anyway in Manel Kape's game. So I think he feels like he can do anything at any moment, and so deciding between options does seem to kind of freeze him at points.
Yeah, I mean, I think he wants to counter so that
I agree.
He knows that. So he knows that what he's doing is just hitting the other guy.
Right. I think that's why he wants to counter those, because
the
choices of what to lead with are too many. It's just like, jab. Jab and feint. Just keep it that simple. And then, once that has an effect, you can lead with other things based on the reactions you're getting. I agree. I think he is at his nature a counterpuncher. And I think he is developing, clearly, into more of an aggressive counterpuncher. I mean, the one thing we were worried about here was that it would be
a stinker.
Yeah, and it wasn't at all. His response to Nicolao's insistence on counterpunching was to answer the call and feed him some things to try and counter. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a great fight. I mean, I thought it was very entertaining. And I don't know, that third round, I mean, Kape, he sort of staggers Nicolao a bit at the end of the round, but it's not like he drops him or hurts him really badly, did he?
I thought he hurt him pretty badly, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I can see the case for it. I didn't think he won it. I mean, again, it was Nicolao. Nicolao also panicked a bit, I think,
sure,
because he was just like, well, I've been getting him with the counter takedowns, and he just went to the well a few too many times.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, it was a good, like you said, it was a good performance. I think both of the guys, in fact, I've been critical of them, but both of them really found an aggressive gear when they needed it, which I was worried that neither of them would.
Yeah. Very entertaining. Okay, last thing I want to mention. Did you catch Nasrat Haqparast's fight?
I did. It was like Charles Jourdain against Marcelo Rojo and Haqparast Garcia were both they felt like these real mirror match fights. It was just like the UFC veteran just has a firepower edge.
Yeah.
These guys, I mean, just in terms of how they looked. Like the two in both of those fights, the guy on the other end just looked really similar.
Yeah.
But yes, I did. And it was a mixture of good and concerning.
That's how I feel. I was, in fact, very concerned and almost reaching the point where I was ready to at least temporarily write Nasrat Haqparast off as a developing fighter. And then I saw the third round. And even, in fact, portions of the second round. I think he came up with some ideas on how to deal with this. But Rafa Garcia, a decent fighter. But if I'm going to put him on a tier list with the rest, with Haqparast's other opponents, he's kind of on the Thibaut Gouti sort of tier. And like Thibaut Gouti, he, as just a sort of meat and potatoes aggressive boxer, had a lot of success. A lot. The fact that Haqparast won and did so impressively, just like he did against Gouti, I don't know. It just sort of feels like the guy, he just thinks his power is going to save him. And the game hasn't progressed beyond that. And then midpoint of the fight rolls around and Haqparast starts finding tons of body work, which I loved. It has been something I've been screaming at him in my mind to do more, basically for his entire UFC career. He's a big puncher. He's quick, and obviously a big kicker as well. He should be.
Was he punching the body much? I just remember him landing that snap kick.
He did both. He did both. It was the snap kick and the round kicks. But he hit a fair number of body punches too, more than I think he has in pretty much any previous fight. He really seemed to have hit upon the general idea that body work was going to get him into this fight, which is good. I like to see that. That is the first signs of veteran thinking from Nasrat Haqparast, is that, this fight is really tough, tooth and nail, slow this motherfucker down. So that was good. I think that was the major turning point that really allowed things to flourish. And once he had that success, once he had a more static Garcia, whose offense was becoming slower and more predictable, he put things together really well. His combinations were really flowing. His jab was leading to nice uppercuts and body punches. He wasn't throwing himself off balance as much as he often has in the past, but it took 8 really ugly minutes to get to that point.
Yeah, that's the worry, is that that's him solving an incredibly simplistic puzzle.
Yes, exactly.
He just has to do better than that.
He had to be convinced, mightily, just to come up with a solution when, like, once you saw it working, you're like, oh, this was there for him the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was thinking about him compared to, like, Drew Dober the other day. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, probably he can probably still beat a bunch of people that Drew Dober can't, just because he can do the wrestle. But yeah, like it's hard. It'll be hard to see him beating a striker of that caliber unless he can. He's going to have to find answers and ways of being other than just more aggressive Kelvin Gastelum with the Southpaw 1-2.
Yeah.
He's going to have to find more than that. He could get away with it if he was a middleweight.
Oh, if he was actually Gastelum? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
He could. But yeah, I just, I really think it's a mental thing largely. I mean, there's a technical issue there as well. Haqparast is a pretty shallow defensive striker, and that's a big problem. Like, basically anyone who wants to hit Nasrat Haqparast in the belly, they get to do it. It's as simple as that. If you're fighting Nasrat Haqparast, just go out there and only punch the body. You will land a lot. As Garcia did here, as Guti did in their fight, as Mark Jacasey did. Basically everyone has, when they've wanted to hit him to the body, they just get to do it. So that's a problem, and like the hitability and everything. But I also just think it's a two-way street. The reason those things haven't developed is that Haqparast is so fast and so durable and powerful. And he just hasn't felt that he needs to. But that's worrying coming like after the Drew Dober fight. Mm-hmm. Why has he not realized? Does it require?
I think he did. I think, as you said, I think he has realized. It's just the fact that he needed to go so deep against a limited opponent before he was able to actually, because he's obviously trained that kind of stuff.
Right.
It was there very deep against a limited opponent before he could actually use it.
But do you think that's a mental hang-up? Do you think he didn't, even though he's clearly trained it and it's there for him, he didn't realize he was going to need it? He was still convinced he was going to walk through this guy? Or do you think it's...
I mean, that's probably just a big part of him, which is just, it just makes it pretty difficult for him to, he's still a young fighter. It's probably pretty difficult just for him to think about what he's doing when he's in there.
I think so. He's very excitable.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's 25. I mean, good to remind me of that. He's a very young fighter, and like I said, I was watching the first half of this fight. I was like, oh, this is it. Mm-hmm. This is all we're going to get out of Nasrat.
Yep.
I've seen this before, and so he did come up with answers. It's clear they were there. They're things he had been working on, and he probably has a good bit more time to continue developing into that kind of fighter. So I would really like to see it, and he just may take a long way around because he is so naturally gifted, or whatever other reason. But for the time being, you're going to have to just expect this when you're pitting Haqparast against even a reasonably good MMA boxer.
Yeah, and it just says, he should still be getting opponents of pretty much around this level.
Yeah. Yeah, let him develop.
You should not, do not put him in the Brad Riddell tier anytime soon.
Yeah. And also, stop giving him, Alex Munoz's. Stop giving him, wrestlers who haven't quite found their own timing on the striking yet that he can just beat up, because it only encourages him to not invest.
Yeah, encourages him that he's a really good striker.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, that's all I wanted to discuss. Glad we got that in, though. I'm still very interested in Nasrat Haqparast. He's absolutely a fighter to watch. But the story, it's not as clear and straight a line as it rarely is, right, when you look at a prospect at the beginning of their career. Okay, that's it for this episode of Heavy Hands. I hope all you out there listening enjoyed our what feels like a very paltry MMA discussion after discussing the legendary Marvin Hagler with Kyle McLachlan. Big thanks again to Kyle for joining us. He told you not to try and find him on social media, but guess what, bitch? You could find him on Twitter at Ignashov_fan for now. I'm pretty sure the last time I plugged his Twitter on the show, it was already out of date. Maybe this will convince him to try it again. So check, like, I don't know, Buakaw fan or Andy Hoog fan or something after that. If Ignashov fan is not there when you look for it,
that does not sound remotely hipstery enough.
You are absolutely right. I'm not enough of a hipster to have predicted the right fighters. I can only think of really big names. Any suggestions?
Hell no.
That's the thing. None of us know. Only Kyle knows what is hipstery enough for Kyle. Find Phil on Twitter as well, at Evil Greg Jackson. Me at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. I don't think we have any articles this week or anything, do we, Phil?
Nope, not this week.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson is not a pay-per-view main event. Who would have thunk it?
Yes. Well, I've been working on some scouting on the side, so I haven't been doing articles the last couple weeks, but I want to write something about Marvin Hagler. So I'm not promising it, but if it doesn't show up the next week, then you are free to bully me online, because it's kind of a timeless sort of type of piece to write, so I'd be happy to write it even well after the fact of the man's untimely passing. All right, well, that's it. Thank you all once again for listening. This week, next week, we will be coming back to discuss Brunson versus Holland, and we've also got Miocic versus Ngannou 2 coming on the heels of that, with what looks like a pretty damn stacked pay-per-view card, in fact. Volkanovski, Ortega, Woodley, Luque. That seems depressing. Sean O'Malley is getting his last chance to annoy us all against Tomas Almeida. A lot of good stuff to talk about. So we'll be back to discuss.
Is that the one where we might be also having a special guest?
Oh, that's right. I should mention that now. We are, unless anything changes, next week we're going to have the Fight Site's Ryan Wagner on. Or Ryan Wagner, as Phil usually insists on pronouncing it. So come to next week for some Wagnerian analysis of these upcoming and past fights. And if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.